What is up? Good morning and welcome to Mock It Like It's Hot. This is Club Fantasy's weekly mock draft show. And folks, some of the best words I've had the liberty of saying in a very long time. The NFL draft is this week. We are 4 days away from the NFL draft, which makes mock drafting and everything just an even bigger hot topic. And when you're that close to the NFL draft, that means you're that close to your rookie drafts, at least if you're a degenerate like everybody in this room and everybody who's playing with us right now. Rookie drafts are coming up, and that is what we are doing today. I am your host, Ryan Weisse. With me, as always, in the co-pilot chair, Austin Amandolia. Austin, how are you doing today, buddy?
I'm doing great. I hate to disagree with you off the bat, but I think the true degenerates have already done their rookie draft.
Well, we had Jeff Bell on the Wednesday show this week, and Jeff brought up something really interesting. He said in an industry mock, because we all spend so much time on this, he thinks it's more fun to do the draft before the draft so that mistakes can still be made. And believe me, if you've ever played in an industry league, there are still plenty of mistakes made. But he said it's more fun to do it before the NFL draft and then in your more casual leagues to do it after the NFL draft.
There you go.
So I thought that was an interesting tidbit from Jeff. You're doing all right this morning, though, Austin?
Oh, yeah, doing great. I'm excited for the NFL draft this week. I won't steal all your thunder with all the announcements we have, but it's going to be a busy week for Club Fantasy, and I'm looking forward to all of the stuff we have around the NFL draft.
So you might have more info on it than me. Not more info, but I just have little one-liners in here. Anyway, on to the rookie draft. Our guest this week started off as just a frequent commenter on YouTube, got himself in the fantasy industry, and one of my favorite Dynasty guests, Gator Jay. He is the host of the Dynasty Gambit for Going for Two, and he also does hosting with Fantasy Intervention, plus producing for Fantasy and Frames. Jay, introduce yourself, tell the people where they can find you, what you're working on, and welcome.
Well, thank you. First of all, I'm glad to be here. Going to have some fun with this rookie mock right before the draft. That's going to be interesting. Going back to what Jeff was saying is there's no way in the world I'm doing a rookie draft before the draft. There's no way. That just seems like you're asking for problems.
I think he was. I think he literally was asking for problems.
Well, and that's Jeff Bell for you. That Jeff Bell loves. Not only does he love to be the problem, he loves to create problems for other people. So no, I love Jeff Bell, by the way. But man, it's fun. Like you said, I started out just as a commenter. Got into the industry. I've had a blast doing it, learned a ton. There's still a lot to learn, but it's fun. Meeting a lot of good people. It's amazing the people that I've met that you would sit there and think like, there's no way this guy would ever talk to me, right? And they're like just normal human beings, and it's awesome to just be able to pick their brain and find out their thought process through things. So I've enjoyed the hell out of it. Go like you said, going for two over there, doing Thursday nights. We do the pregame during in season. We're every other week out of season, so that's fun. Every other week though, it's really hard because there's so much information.
Yeah, you're packing a lot in.
And you're gonna pack it all in. Here's what I will tell you though. When I got into this industry, one of the guys that truly got me into it was Chase Vernon, and gave me really a shot to just hang out with him and Shane Manila, Jacob Sanderson. Those guys are awesome. I've learned a ton from those dudes. I
was gonna say no slight to Jacob or Chase, but Shane is a favorite of this show. Shane has been an A1 from day one, so we love not necessarily Mock It Like It's Hot, but Club Fantasy in general. So
oh man, Shane just he's the one that just tells me, hey, you effed up.
He's great.
The problem with Shane is there is no filter. The good thing about Shane is there is no filter. He's just going to tell you what it is. So I absolutely love Shane. Behind the scenes with Fantasy Fantasy and Frames is an absolute blast. I'm learning a ton there. It is absolutely wonderful to be in this industry. So I'm ready to kick this mock off if you guys
At one point, people were trying to marry Shane and Faith, so I knew she would chime in there at one point.
He's been linked to being married to so many people.
Well, I told Faith she had to change her last name to Is the Worst. So Shane is the worst, Faith is the worst.
Yeah, I don't know how good that goes. I mean, though, Faith and worst. I mean, they just don't seem like they go together, right?
Faith is the worst, though. No.
Oh, okay. Well, I see. I'm going to disagree with you there. I'm going to 100% disagree with you because the last time I was on Club Fantasy was the show where we were talking about the where we went wrong. Well, the regret
Oh
show.
yeah, the fantasy regret show, the
yeah.
airing of the fantasy grievances.
Yes, and Faith was awesome in that. She really welcomed me in. I really can't say the same
Faith
for you,
is,
Ryan.
It is, well, you'll never get that from me. No, it is all love between me and Faith, and I just give her a hard time. And Faith and Kelly, unfortunately, were two that I always give a hard time in the mock draft show. Faith is with us in this draft. I'm going to go to get the draft up on the screen here, guys. So as mentioned, it is a 5-round rookie mock, tongue-tied on a Monday.
Mookie Betts.
There you go. And we're going single QB this time. A lot of dynasties right now are super flex, but I went single QB to keep it different. And Jay, you had mentioned, doing a draft right before the NFL draft is interesting, and you would never do it in real life. Part of the reason I like to do what we're doing here is we did a super flex mock a week ago or 2 weeks ago. And then we're going to do these same 2 drafts after the draft and see how much landing spot has changed, because I'm a big guy on landing spots and everything. So I'm going to go ahead and get the draft started here. As soon as I find what tab is the actual draft. There we go. And our friend Stacey Perez is kicking us off, and it looks like she's in the room, so we don't have to worry about a auto draft. And she does exactly what I expected her to do, which is the first question I prepped you guys for. Bijan Robinson, first pick off the board. Literally no surprise if you've been doing fantasy drafts or mock drafts or rookie mocks or startup mocks. I want to talk to you guys about Bijan Robinson, and let's talk about ideal landing spots. You guys can talk a little bit about where you think he's going to end up, but where would you like to see him end up, Jay?
Yeah, I saw a mock by Matt Miller, and he has him going to San Diego. The LA Chargers. And I really do not
fully acceptable.
right. And I really don't hate that spot with all the stuff going on with Austin Eckler. I guess my dream landing spot would be somewhere like Atlanta for him. And being a Bucs fan, that's horrible to say out loud. But just the overall what he can do and help with that offense, I think Atlanta is probably the dream landing spot for me.
I know it's the dream landing spot for Austin as a Falcons fan as well. Now, Austin, would you agree with that for fantasy football?
Well, I mean, okay, yes, actually, because Atlanta, they were running the ball really well with Tyler Algier. It was like a 6th-round rookie last year. So yeah, Bijan landing in Atlanta would be great. From a football perspective, I would like Atlanta to trade back a little bit to make that move. That would be ideal. But my favorite one, and it's only my favorite one because spoiler alert, this came up in our NFL mock draft that we'll talk about on Wednesday. Yeah. I actually like the idea of him going to Baltimore. If we can get
Lamar, hated that very much so, but please keep going.
Because if we can keep Lamar Jackson in Baltimore, just the idea of Lamar and Bijan Robinson running an RPO style offense just gets my energy going. And at that point, Baltimore doesn't need to draft another receiver. You could just line Bijan up in the slot and they'll be good to go.
Now, Jay, I'm someone who notoriously does not watch college football. I am very much I find everything out after the draft, landing spot, draft capital, all of that matters a lot to me when I'm prepping for fantasy football. It suited me well. I'm just not a big fan of the college game. No slight against college. It's just, I don't have that many brain cells. I focus on NFL and fantasy. Is Bijan this generational prospect that everyone's making him out to be? If he ended up in Baltimore, is he good enough that J.K. Dobbins just goes away and it's actually good for fantasy football? Or are we going to end up in sort of like a timeshare if he ends up in a place like that?
Well, first of all, I don't think no matter where Bijan goes, is it going to be a timeshare?
Okay, that's kind of my question.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess, I've heard the fact that he's the best prospect since Saquon Barkley. But I mean, he's a running back. So we all know that they're going to get injured at some point. The lifespan of a running back, of course, is not as long as any other player. But again, I don't think it matters where he goes. He's going to be the primary, whether it's a 60-40, whether it's a 70-30 split. He's going to be the primary. And that's just, again, that's wherever he goes, in my opinion.
I guess that makes sense. Austin, what is your take just on J.K. Dobbins if Bijan Robinson ends up there? Do you think they'll move on? Or J.K. Dobbins if Bijan ends up there. Do you think they'll move on? Do you think they'll split them? Obviously, Dobbins has had his injury concerns so far as a professional.
Yeah, I mean, I think that could see them splitting time some just to increase the longevity of both of those young running backs. because I think teams are starting to move that direction in general. But I think what you would really see is that J.K. Dobbins would probably continue to be a primarily just a rusher, and you would see Bijan really take on that pass catching back role. And I really think you would see them move Bijan Robinson throughout the offense. Like, he can line up outside as a receiver. He's got the catch skills to do that. So I think, to me, when I think of Bijan Robinson, I know he has been compared to Saquon Barkley, but I think a more apt comparison is Christian McCaffrey light, because of the way he can be used as a weapon throughout the offense.
Apparently, like I said, I've watched the film. The kid is good. I apparently have not watched enough, because I did not realize we were walking into that. I do want to throw Joel in here. Last year of Dobbins' rookie deal, which would make the timing of all this make sense. And then I'm not sure who's running the fantasy intervention tab, but both of the teams you guys mentioned, they said they would suck for targets. I'm going to stick with this Baltimore thing. Austin, you mentioned, you think they would move him around. Do you think we would see more RB targets out of the Baltimore Ravens? Keeping in mind they are switching to a new offensive coordinator this year as well, so we could just see a different offense from the Baltimore Ravens in 2023.
Well, I think if they, let's say in this scenario, they're re-signing Lamar Jackson. If they are re-signing Lamar Jackson, they need to find a way to protect Lamar Jackson more often, and so they need him to run the ball less. And the reason that the Baltimore offense has been awful for targets is because there are no dump offs, because Lamar is the dump off when things go awry. And so if they're going to try and prioritize Lamar's health, they're going to have to target the running backs more. And Bijan is the perfect fit for that.
Gotcha. I'm going to put you on the spot with this last question, Jay, as we move on from Bijan Robinson. Is there somewhere you don't want him to end up? You kind of mentioned the Chargers thing, and then you moved on from that. But is there a team that you're hearing rumors that they might draft Bijan Robinson that you don't want him to end up? If you guys don't have one, I'll have one I throw at you, but I'll ask you first, Jay.
New England.
Okay, that was mine. You did it. Great job.
It's very simple. I think that actually kills a lot of value for both Bijan and for Stevenson. So, yeah.
Yes.
So I think that would probably be the worst case scenario all around. Of course, it's Bill Belichick, so you never know who's actually going to be calling the plays. So who do you it might be good for whatever the quarterback is there now, Mac Jones.
Yeah,
it might be okay for him because he'll be able to dump it off, like Austin was saying, in the passing game to Bijan. But man, it would hurt so many feelings. And so much value for both of them being there in New England, in my opinion. So
perfect. Austin, I saw your eyes light up with New England. Was that your answer as well?
Oh, 100%. I'm
going to throw another one at you from our mock draft that we did, because I want you guys to kind of weigh in on this. While I was picking for Detroit at 18, I was tempted for a second. And I've seen mock drafts where Detroit is ready to move on from DeAndre Swift and grabs Bijan Robinson. But personally, I don't think that move makes sense with the addition of David Montgomery and still having DeAndre Swift, Austin.
Yeah, I agree. If they hadn't have made a move this offseason for David Montgomery, I could see that being a potential route that they would take. I really doubt that they would do David Montgomery and Bijan. That feels a little bit duplicative. And also then you're paying David Montgomery way too much for drafting when you could have just drafted a rookie running back and have that rookie contract deal. So I don't see that as a likely outcome. Now, would I like it? Yeah, because that offensive line is great. And Bijan, I think, would do really well there. And Jared Goff is not afraid to dump the ball off.
Yes.
So I think that would be a good
80
fit.
targets for DeAndre Swift in limited time last year or something like that. So
right. I don't see it, but it would be a fun landing spot for sure.
So guys, I want to basically just keep this same theme going. Let's talk about Jaxon Smith-Nijgba. He is the universal wide receiver one in this draft. So I'm going to start with Jay. Do you do rookie rankings? Is JSN your wide receiver one? And then let's talk about ideal landing spots.
Yeah, no, I try to stay away from the rookie rankings because I would really screw them up real quick and easy.
It doesn't stop me.
No. But I also believe, very much like Shane on Wednesday nights, he does them, but he's a tinkerer, and I think I would be the same way. I would be tinkering and always moving players around just because, somebody got some kind of news, and I would want to move it just because of that. Again, same thing with the quarterbacks. Like you're hearing, everybody faded or is fading Will Levis, and now all of a sudden he sounds like he's going to be the number 2. So it's like, you know what I mean? It's like all this back and forth, and so I would be constantly moving in the rankings.
We're going to talk about those quarterbacks next. You've literally worked us on to the next question, but let's talk about JSN a little bit.
Yeah, so I think here's what I would like to see happen, and it's just, you know, me being probably just seeing what's happened over the last few years, like with what Miami has done, what certain teams have done, and go get the quarterback and then try to go get their number 1 from college. So to me, the idea is Houston takes Stroud at 2 and then takes JSN, and that would jumpstart, you know, at 12, I think it is, but that would jumpstart their offense, you know, with having okay, he's a 4th round pick, but having P. Ryan back there, he showed that he could do it last year. I think that would be a great landing spot for JSN. I just, you know, yes, he is my number 1, but again, landing spot is going to truly matter, because you don't want to see him in an offense with you know, 12 other 1st round guys, you know, at wide receiver, because then he's just going to get. He's a rookie, so it's going to be hard to keep up with him.
Yeah, this question was inspired by a great article I read from Ben Cummins this morning, where he talked about his favorite JSN landing spots. And you guys had touched on New England, and you kind of said you don't want him having to compete. He had mentioned, first of all, the Houston landing spot, but now with the quarterback rumors we're going to get to, he's worried that if they don't take a quarterback at 2, do we really want JSN in Houston? And he also brought up New England, which would have been an excellent landing spot before Juju Smith-Schuster, Austin.
Yeah, I really agree with that. I was just looking at the draft order and I was thinking New England, they're right in this perfect range also to draft JSN. But if they don't go that route, I do like him to a team kind of in that like 17 to 23 range. So some of the teams in there, like the Los Angeles Chargers, drafting JSN.
That was his wild card at the end, and that was his ideal landing spot. I got to give credit to Ben Cummins for today's episode. His article inspired a lot of the questions I'm asking with ideal landing spots and everything. So.
Oh yeah, that would be a fire landing spot. I also would be a fan. I mean, even Baltimore, they're in that range. They could take him. I would be fine with that. And the other one that kind of stuck out to me is the Minnesota Vikings. Now, as much as I love KJ Osborne, and I really hope that he gets to step into that wide receiver 2 role this year, if JSN fell to the Vikings, which he would have to take a bit of a tumble to do that, but if he did, that would be a fire offense between Justin Jefferson and JSN, and you would have 2 elite weapons and then TJ Hawkinson at tight end. I think that would be a really fun offense.
Yeah. We got a couple of comments. Josh wants JSN in Houston, says if it's Tennessee or New England, he'll cry. And Joel Worth says Green Bay. The Green Bay fan wants him in Green Bay. I don't think there's any surprise there whatsoever.
We also got some snarky comments in the sleeper chat. I'm like sad we can't pull that up on the screen.
I haven't even had a chance to go look at it yet, but please let us know.
Oh yeah, Mike saying that the bet is plus 120 for the draft to be over before we finish talking about JSN.
That's very fair. I had mentioned to Jay that the last time we did a rookie draft, the draft was over like 17 minutes into the show, and then I just kept talking and talking and talking because it's what I do. Let's take some more Starkey comments. Josh is calling out Joel for taking Devon, I believe it's Achane, I always get it wrong, over Zach Charbonnet. Jay, what are your thoughts on Achane, Charbonnet, and those kind of middle running backs?
Well, I have Charbonnet as my RB3. I think truly he is, you know, yeah, he's probably pushing to be my RB2, to be quite honest, because I think he is one of like three running backs in this draft that are true 3-down running backs. You know, with Bijan Robinson, Tank Bigsby, and Charbonnet in being those 3-down running backs. I mean, if you're higher on Achane, coming out of Texas A&M. I mean, he's a speed demon, right? So that's what he's going to be. You're looking probably more slot than running back itself, because I don't think he's going to be able to bust the holes that we want in fantasy. So I'm with Josh on that one. Achane over Charbonnet is a little bit of a reach for me.
I say speed is every fantasy player's favorite thing in the entire world, and we see it bite us time and time again, yet we don't seem to learn our lessons. Austin, I'm gonna have you continue with that question, then I'm gonna interrupt with a little experiment I want to play here. So
yeah, sure. I mean, I agree. I'm not ready to do Devon Achane over Zach Charbonnet. I would love to hear Joel's take on it because I really respect Joel as a dynasty analyst. And so I would love for him to be on right now to be able to talk about it. But I agree. The thing about Achane is his speed. He ran a 4.32.40 at the combine. That is wildly fast for a running back. My biggest issue, though, is frankly his size. He's one of the smallest of these top four. He's under 6 feet, under 200 pounds, and that makes me a little bit nervous for him being a three down back. Zach Charbonnet, I was so pleased that he fell to me because I took the 107 because it felt like a dead zone to me. And I was very pleased to get Charbonnet because I agree. I might put Charbonnet up ahead of Jahmyr Gibbs just because he has more of that ability to be a 3 down back.
Again, fantasy intervention does not agree. And our good buddy Hutchinson Brown, I saw he did a quote on a podcast this week that he thinks Gibbs, based on his possible target volume, could be the RB1 in Dynasty after the draft, depending on landing, or after the season, depending on landing spot. But Hutch doesn't have a problem throwing them hot takes out there. We don't necessarily need to talk about that. So one thing I'm going to have you guys do, this would normally be best suited for the end of the show. And Austin, I'm going to let you make your pick before we get into this. But this would normally be suited for the end of the show. But we know that Sleeper makes all the players disappear after the draft is over and thus ruins my question for the end of the show. So we're going to continue on some of the player analysis in just a few minutes. But while these players are still available and while we have about a round and a half to talk about it, I want you guys to look and tell me players you are shocked haven't been drafted yet. It's only the 4th round. It's coming to the end of the 4th round. Players you're shocked haven't been drafted yet. Players you would certainly take in the 5th round. But more importantly, there are people out there like me who trade away all their draft picks and they fill up their taxi squads by priority waiver claims at the end of the draft. So Jay, who are some players that right now haven't been drafted that you think should have been drafted, you think need to be drafted before this draft is over, but more importantly, players that fantasy managers can claim when the draft is over on waivers?
Yeah, so probably the one that stands out right now, and I know probably the reason he hasn't been drafted is we're not doing a tight end premium here, but Sam Laporta, he's gaining a lot of steam, and Cody Carpentier from Player Profiler has been on him for like the last couple of weeks and pounding the drum for him. I haven't seen a lot of information on him, but if Cody's talking about him, we all should be paying attention in my opinion. So,
and that's a name that's actually come up quite a bit is Laporta. Some of the smartest people in this industry, Cody, and then I know all of the guys over at Devi Royale are really in on Laporta as well. So,
yeah.
Anybody else? Oh, Austin, go ahead.
I was just going to say 100%. That was the first player that came to my mind was Sam Laporta.
Okay. Do you have another one to throw in?
I mean, we should also note part of the reason that Sam Laporta hasn't gone yet is you have to scroll past all of the like offensive line and long snappers and all.
Let me interrupt you real quick because that's a really great point, actually. So before we get into the players, the whole point of this show is to make you a better drafter. It's to make you better at your real fantasy drafts, and that's what mock drafting is all about. And Austin, you hit such a wonderful point. So because of the way I have this league set up, it's all bench. So I don't know if that would fix if I had made it where it was 1 quarterback, 1 running back, 1 wide receiver, 1 tight end, 1 flex. It'll be an interesting experiment to try for next week. But the lesson to be learned here is pre-scroll your draft and look for players that are hidden in ADP that you can maybe throw a star and throw into your draft queue because you're going to miss them if you don't. There was a wide receiver a few years ago. I don't remember who it was now, but there was a wide receiver a few years ago where he had just switched teams and he had fallen so far on the ADP that you could land him in like the 15th round if you weren't playing with really sharp people. So no offense to Sleeper. They normally do a really great job, but because of the way they have their weird rookie draft set up, unless we're going to start drafting all 22, Laporta is kind of buried right now. Go ahead, Austin.
Yeah, 100%. Another player that is buried just like that is Luke Schoonmaker, who's a tight end.
From Michigan.
Out of Michigan, right. And I really dig Schoonmaker. He ranked out of the tight ends in this class, he ranked 4th in yards per route run. And when I'm looking at the tight end position, one thing that I really appreciate is guys that are just straight up beast. So like Darnell Washington, if he had somehow fallen to me in that 3rd round, I would have taken him, but unfortunately Faith took him instead. And Darnell Washington, he's 6'7", 270.
You ain't just sneaking a Georgia Bulldog past Faith. That's that shit I don't like.
I know it's rough. But so if you miss out on Darnell Washington and you want another beast at tight end, Luke Schoonmaker, he's going to be there. He's 6'6", 250, and he can catch the ball, athletic. I like him, and particularly just in this NFL class, this draft class in general, I love the tight ends, and so taking some dart throws at tight end, I'm willing to do in this draft.
One more thing I'm going to throw in draft etiquette wise before I have you continue on that topic, Jay. Faith brings up, you're not supposed to talk about players before they're drafted. 100%. I love draft etiquette, and that is 100% a thing. I am one of the people who get the most mad when this happens in a draft room. For this show, though, it's entertainment value, and I need these guys to talk about these players before Thanos snaps them into the dust forever, because that's what happens when the draft ends. Jay, anybody else jumping out at you that should be drafted or should be players we're looking for at the end of the draft?
No, the one thing I will add to Darnell Washington is something that Stacy brought up on, I believe it was last Wednesday, when she's a huge fan of Darnell Washington because of the size of his hands. He's got 11-inch hands, and if
Lord,
yeah, which is crazy. So her visual aid was an actual 8 by 8
is that
by
a
10,
ruler? No, a piece of paper.
A piece of paper. His hands were that big as a piece of paper. So I thought that was pretty interesting the way she brought that up.
My God.
Yeah.
The one that I would actually look at right now, and he just went, Zach Kuntz was another tight end.
Go ahead, though.
These tight ends, I love these tight ends later in the draft. Can I bring up two real quick things, and I want to ask you guys too. This is a one quarterback. So Bryce Young, Anthony Richardson. I don't mind the Anthony Richardson at 112, but Bryce Young at 19. That just seems
actually
a little
save
early.
it. That is my next question. So we're good. Yep. So
sorry. I'm sorry.
No, you're good. So yeah, that was kind of where I was going to go. And honestly, let's just head there. So looking at this, because I want to go back to my starred comments here. Intervention brings up, most quarterbacks are not going to go until the late second in kind of your standard rookie drafts, and they're all going in the first round here. And again, they bring up with this enormous comment that's just covering Jay up, that Superflex leagues are having such an influence on regular leagues. And so I honestly probably want to talk a little bit about quarterbacks, but let's start with that ADP. And Jay, you asked the question. So Austin, I'll let you get us started. How do we feel about Bryce Young, Anthony Richardson being 2 of the first 12 picks of this draft? And then I'm going to have you guys continue. And Jay, I'm going to bring you in for this one. Then the large gap to CJ Stroud.
Well, honestly, I'm fine with this because I don't love all of the players in this rookie class. It doesn't feel like a terribly deep rookie class to me. And if you're at the 109, 112, you're not in contention to get the most elite players. And you probably have a good quarterback already. You probably have a Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, a Jalen Hurts. And the people who have the one-on-one, they probably are looking at Kirk Cousins. Maybe they have been trudging around with Derek Carr, Jimmy Garoppolo. Like, they may have some quarterback issues. And so you're getting potentially elite talent that could spur into a top 10 quarterback when you won your fantasy league last year. Like, that I think is incredible. And worst case scenario, Anthony Richardson pops off in year 2, you trade him away and you get some other great value. Or you have an incredible backup if, like, let's say you have Josh Allen and he gets hurt for a season. So I actually feel comfortable with this. And I don't think it's, to me, this isn't reflective of Superflex leagues skewing how we look at quarterbacks. I think this is more representation of how people feel about this year's draft class. When Trevor Lawrence is going at 111, there were a lot of other elite athletes that you could take in that draft before you got to Trevor Lawrence. Whereas here, I really feel like once you get outside of the top 3 to 4 picks in this rookie class, like, the tiers start to jump pretty quickly.
Yeah, and I think that makes a lot of sense. I personally, just to answer, since Jay kind of put it out there for the group, I was burned by this myself in a 1 QB league where I had some QB issues. I think Matt Ryan was my quarterback back when he was in Atlanta. And I took Mac Jones a little bit too high. He had the first round draft capital. I was like, you know what? And so I took him mid-second round, early second round, something along those lines. and I immediately regretted it. Like, I still hold him on my roster in a 1 QB league, even though I've since traded for Patrick Mahomes just because of what I paid for him. And I know I'm never going to get anything back on it. So I'm going the opposite way of Austin here, is give me all the running backs and wide receivers unless I desperately need a quarterback. And like Austin said, if you're picking at the back end of this draft, not talking about trades, which we'll hit on in a little bit, if you're picking at the back end of this draft, it probably means you don't need a quarterback. The hard part about dynasty mock drafts, and especially rookie dynasty mock drafts, is they're very roster dependent. There are no rosters. We are making this thing up as we go. So this is more about learning ADP. And one of my reasons that I love running these drafts before the draft is we're going to do these exact same drafts after the draft and see how landing spot changes everything and draft capital changes everything. Jay, what is your thought on, let's talk about the top 4 quarterbacks. And I love Hendon Hooker, and I love to see that he went over Will Levis here. However, you were just about to touch on this, and I'm glad you stopped because it was a question I wanted to ask. Will Levis is now being projected as the odds-on favorite to go number 2 to Houston above CJ Stroud. And that new score, the S2, was making the rounds on the internet this week, and CJ Stroud scored as poorly as you could possibly score on this thing with an 18% versus Bryce Young's 98%, I believe it was. Are we going to see CJ Stroud fall on draft day despite a very successful collegiate career, Jay?
I mean, I hope not. I think on the field he was probably. I have him as my QB1. So I hope he doesn't fall. But if he does, somebody is, we've seen this over the years, though. We've seen it with, going back to Aaron Rodgers, where he sat in the green room for it felt like 4 days. Somebody's going to end up with a steal there with him on the field. He played in a Ryan Day offense. And that's, I'm not saying it's an over complicated offense to learn. But it is a pass heavy offense, and when you have elite wide receivers that he has had over the last few years, you still got to get the ball to him, and he's done that. So on the field, I mean, listen, jocks, stupid jocks, but they're smart on the field. Okay, cool. I don't care what his
I don't know much about the S2 test because I know the Wonderlic asks some crazy questions at times as well. So.
Is this the new test that takes over for the Wonderlic? Because I mean.
Well, actually, let me bring up Michael's comment here because I've been learning a lot about this test in the last few days. So Houston doesn't use the S2 test. And here's what's insane. When S2 first came out, they made it a rule that only one team per division was given access to the test. And right now they've only doubled that. And it's very incredible to me that the NFL is cool with a outside agency limiting the information that they're offering specific. How is that not a competitive advantage disadvantage? So very strange to me. So it is not necessarily replacing the Wonderlic. Obviously the creator of S2 would love to see that happen, but right now it's I think it's been run since 2018, 2019. It's still in its early stages. The anecdotal evidence I've heard is we have seen highly rated quarterbacks in the S2 play poorly, but we have never seen a poorly rated quarterback in the S2 play well. And so that's kind of the anecdotal evidence of the S2 right now, but it's still in its early stages.
That's interesting. I mean, I really don't pay attention to the off the field test.
I don't either. It's just been everywhere for me lately. It's
right.
It's one of those things that the first time you notice something, you see it everywhere. And that's what's happened to me recently.
It almost sounds like you are paying attention or have the wrong people on your Twitter feed if that's all they're talking about.
Oh my goodness. Got to do some curating.
Yeah. I mean, I agree. I'm not sure that I really buy into these reports. I think it's just we have had months of coverage of these 4 players, and at some point it gets really boring to debate Bryce Young versus CJ Stroud as the number 1. And so media narratives need to continue getting creative. Okay, how can we create a new story that's going to keep people's interest in? I think that's why we've seen Hendon Hooker getting some recent interest. And I think that's part of why this S2 score has become such a prominent narrative around CJ Stroud. I look at CJ Stroud, he's my QB1 in this class as well for fantasy purposes. And I just look at the on-field talent. He's great. And some of the stats even back it up. I think the idea that you would want Will Levis over CJ Stroud is freaking bonkers. If you look at the pressure to sack rate that they had last year, Will Levis was at 26.8%. A quarter of the time he was pressured, he was getting sacked last year. That's going to translate to the NFL. CJ Stroud, it was 12.5%. He was getting sacked less than half of the amount of time as Will Levis was when pressured. So I don't buy into this.
That's a really interesting stat. I like that a lot, actually.
Yeah.
Jay, I'm going to put you on this. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry, Austin. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, even higher than Will Levis, it's actually Hendon Hooker at 29%.
Well, yeah, I think when you're looking at those numbers, you also have to look at the offensive line and then translate that to where they're possibly going to end up in the NFL and look at the offensive line in Houston or, what was in Carolina or wherever these players could end up, look at Indy, for instance,
exactly.
So.
Exactly. Like Will Levis ending up in Indianapolis with that pressure to sack rate, that spells trouble to me. Yep. Whereas CJ Stroud or Bryce Young, like they're both in that 12% range. And so they can go to Houston and deal with the pressure and it not translate to endless sacks.
There you go. Jay, as a Florida fan, what's your overall take on Anthony Richardson? Where should he be going?
I mean, looking back at the board, I don't mind it in a 1 QB where he's being taken there at 112. Because like you guys were saying, this is assuming this is the defending champ. You also are completely shooting for all upside. And I truly think that like his floor is like where like a Will Levis ceiling is right now, So, I mean, you're shooting all upside. If he hits, great. If he doesn't, well, you're probably sitting there, like you were saying, with, a Josh Allen or a Patrick Mahomes already. So it's okay to, re-roll next year if you have to. Yeah. So I don't mind it there. As far as, where he should go in the draft, there's like two or three spots that I just truly think he needs to sit for a year. At least 13 weeks,
okay.
Learn the NFL game. One of the biggest flaws for him was accuracy. And if you take that as a quarterback, that is, it almost directly translate to footwork. And what I saw in the college game was it didn't really matter with footwork for him, other than his accuracy. Yeah. But then I looked at what he was doing at the combine and okay, we can't double count everything, but you also, you have to look at certain things. And his footwork, and again, no pressure, underwear Olympics, all that, but his footwork was way better when he was trying to throw the ball in the at the combine, and of course at his pro day. So I think there's been some work to it, but I still would like to see more. But I love him, his complete upside. So if I'm at the 112, 111, okay, I'll take that dart throw.
Now you mentioned that CJ Stroud is your number one. Mm-hmm. If you got to this situation with Stroud available, would you still take Richardson over Stroud because of the insane athletic upside?
Yeah, because if I'm sitting there that far back in the draft, I'm again having a top
lottery
quarterback, ticket. Right? Then now I look at Stroud as the safest, right? Yes. So he's the one that I know is going to get me that solid. But now Anthony Richardson, he's gonna have spike weeks. And if I can get that spike week, oh my Lord, give me that all day long.
Well, especially after what we saw from Justin Fields last year, that he didn't have to be a great thrower of the football to be an excellent fantasy asset. Along those same lines, Austin, you guys were both kind of starting to move into this territory when we were talking about the quarterbacks. And one of the things I've said is right now with the devoid of talent in Houston and Carolina, I don't know that either of the two quarterbacks that end up there really deserve to be the QB1. And one that's been interesting to me is like if Richardson, maybe not so much Levis, but if Hendon Hooker or one of these guys ended up in Indianapolis for this year, Seattle for next year, I think they have an opportunity via landing spot to maybe overtake these top guys, even though Bryce Young just seems to have all the weapons in a very, very small package.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the things that we have really seen over the past 2 years is that the landing spot can really determine how these players develop over time. Trevor Lawrence is the perfect test case of this, where first year it was just a mess, and that was reflected in his play. But then the second year, things completely changed, and he is now going as like a consensus top 8 dynasty quarterback.
Yeah, but Austin, that had a lot to do with that Ohio State head coach that moved down to Jacksonville, though.
Oh, yeah.
That was a rough period of time for football and fantasy football and the Jacksonville Jaguars. But they seem to have corrected that ship. So.
And I'm with Chris on this. I didn't mention that the two spots is, for me, it's Seattle and it's Detroit. To be able to sit behind a vet quarterback and learn the game, learn the NFL game. I mean, if you go to Seattle, you're sitting behind Geno Smith, solid QB. Can you imagine next year?
And similar play style.
Right. Anthony Richardson to DK Metcalf.
And that's exactly open. And so let me just throw that out there for you, Jay. Let's say, the Will Levis thing is a smokescreen. So Bryce Young to Carolina, CJ Stroud to Houston, and Anthony Richardson to the Seattle Seahawks. Are you considering taking Richardson as your first quarterback in those landing spots?
I think you have to, right? When you look at the weapons that they have, I think that's a no-brainer. I guess it depends on what else Houston and Carolina would do in the draft. I mean,
JSN to Houston would obviously influence that a little bit.
You'd have to take that into consideration. Also knowing that, Geno Smith's on a 3-year deal. So, Anthony Richardson is probably at that point definitely going to sit for the year, which I'm not opposed to. But if that's my options, I'm probably leaning a little bit more Stroud there just because of the weapons that are there.
Yeah, I think particularly depending on your timeline in your dynasty league, like if you are thinking you are going to compete this year, I might still go with CJ Stroud over Anthony Richardson. But if you are on a 2-year timeline where you are expecting 2024 to be your year, I would take the dart throw on Anthony Richardson and then see if you can get Marvin Harrison Jr. in the 2024 draft and really just go for it then.
Yeah, that's what they call it in the Ohio State Pro Day, that they were all there to watch JSN, but they were looking at the Lamborghini before you could buy it because that's all anybody cared about was Marvin Harrison. So one player I want to bring up because I saw a couple of interesting tweets. Again, it was a highlight from Ben Cummins. Sean Tucker out of Syracuse went in the middle toward the end of the 3rd round here. And there are now, if I'm reading everything correctly, conflicting reports that he has been given a clear bill of health. But then another NFL scout said that his heart issue is so severe that he would not be surprised if Sean Tucker never has a career in the NFL. Jay, I'm not asking for medical prognosis. I know that's not what you do. Is Sean Tucker hands off just with that kind of red flag that he may never have a career in the NFL? Because he is a very highly regarded running back in this draft class.
Well, he was highly regarded. So you have NFL teams. And again, like you said a little bit ago, this is smokescreen season. So we got about 3 more days to figure out where the smoke is actually clear and who was actually sending signals or whatnot. But today he's having his pro day at Syracuse. I think we may get some more information, later on this afternoon.
Like a 3-hour drive for me. I should head out right now.
Yeah, you should. You should absolutely do that. And Adam Schefter is going to be there from what I'm understanding. Okay. So maybe you could get some information, some inside information. So there you go. I mean, hands off. Look, I traded in that. I know this is going to be a little weird, but last year, right before the season started, I play in a C2C league with a couple guys from Dynasty Rewind, and I traded Sean Tucker for Anthony Richardson. Really didn't pay attention to Sean Tucker, and I got all kinds of flack for it. Ooh. But I was being a homer. The other guy was also being a homer, so he liked Sean Tucker. I like Anthony Richardson. We made that trade. Now everybody's like, "Oh my God, what a trade!" Yeah,
you caught the flack, and now it's the other way around. So.
Right. The problem for me is, where is he going to be drafted? Is he going to be drafted? Because when I was looking this morning at Matt Miller's from ESPN, when on his mock, he's got him going in like the 5th or 6th round. Ironically, to Houston, I believe. So it's going to be, for me, I'm not in on Sean Tucker. I haven't been in on Sean Tucker. And with this issue popping up, this could be why it's been super, super, super quiet around Sean Tucker, other than right after the combine where, he didn't do anything,
Yeah.
Now we know why.
Let's go to the opposite end here. You mentioned it's been quiet on Sean Tucker. It started off very loud for Israel Abanikanda, Austin. After his pro day, everybody was very, very happy, but it since got quiet, and he's going after some backs that it was a little confusing to me here. Tyjae Spears at 111, Kendry Miller at 2-1, Tank Bigsby, Roshan Johnson, Zach Evans all go ahead of Israel Abanikanda. It seems like a lot of the goodwill from his excellent pro day is worn off on Abanikanda right now, Austin.
Yeah, and I think this is probably where he should be going, I would say, because those other running backs are a little bit more of a certain thing. The thing with Abanikanda, he's fast. He's all speed. After I watched his tape, that was the one word I wrote down was speed. The problem with him is that he is not a big yards after contact guy. And so when he gets hit, he's probably going down. He's got one of the lowest yards after contact per attempt of the running backs in this class at about 2.7 yards after contact. So once he's hit, he's pretty much going down. And the thing with him is he's one of those running backs who's going to be good in open space. He'll be able to outrun a lot of defenders, but you got to get him in open space. And so you've got to scheme him open in some ways. Whereas there are other running backs going ahead of him that have better vision and are going to be able to make their holes themselves.
Yeah. I'm going to give you guys an opportunity after I ask my last question to talk about any rookies we haven't had a chance to talk about yet. Just anybody who you wanted an opportunity to talk about. But before we get into that, let's talk a little bit more about the tight ends, because you guys mentioned a lot of your later picks. The players you liked were tight ends, and a lot of them went in this draft more towards the end. But I actually want to start at the top, Jay. So Mayer goes at 2.7. Dalton Kincaid goes at 2.8. Kincaid has picked up some hype recently, and a recent Football Guy show, Dane Brugler, said Dalton Kincaid might be the best pass catcher in this draft, wide receivers included. That's obviously a big green flag for fantasy football. What are your take on these early guys? We know Washington is a blocker who's going to need to develop. Mayer and Kincaid have kind of alternated being the one. Who's your one, and how do you think we should handle these guys?
Well, during the college season, it was Mayer. I just don't think he did enough in the college season to keep the number one spot. Kincaid, I think, had issues with his back or whatnot. Since I guess it was right before the combine, he got 100% clearance, or right after he got 100% clearance. But he's a pure pass catcher. Mayer needs a little bit of work in pass catching, but he's more of a blocker, right? I like Kincaid over Mayer. Now, 4 months ago it was the other way around. Just as a
brought
true
up a really
tight end.
good point is during the season it was Mayer from everybody, and that seems to have shifted. So is this a thing where we've gotten complacent since the season has ended?
No, I think it has a lot to do with Mayer going to Notre Dame and being on TV and everybody seeing him, and Kincaid going to Utah, and you saw him in game 1 of the year against Florida. And then unless you're on the West Coast, you didn't really watch a ton of Utah games. You may have seen him against USC or UCLA or something like that. But, it was after the year, after the combine, that everybody started to dive into his tape and see what kind of true pass catcher he was. He can play in line and block a little bit. That needs a little bit of work. But he can, for his size, I mean, the dude can scoot.
I was just saying, let me just throw this out real quick. 240? Our dynasty lead, Joel Worth, says, cannot pass block, referring to McCade, and called him Mike Gesicki with a bad back, and that is not the comp you're looking for.
Well, no, maybe not. But I think he's a better pass catcher than Gesicki was.
Well, and Gesicki had system issues essentially his entire time in the NFL. So if Kincaid were to end up in a better position, a better role, and I've been one that the spark lit for me that if he could go to Kansas City and learn behind Travis Kelce for a year or two, I think that'd be excellent for him.
Don't do that.
So what you're saying is Kincaid's going to retire before before he sees the field.
Yes, 100%. Okay. He's never going to play because Travis Kelce is immortal and will never die. So
65 years old and Travis Kelce's still catching 30 touchdowns a year.
Yeah. Now, Austin, I want to throw in Luke Musgrave into this discussion. So please continue to talk about Kincaid versus Mayer as much as you'd like to. But Luke Musgrave, when I first started digging into my draft rankings, Luke Musgrave was being talked about with these guys. And then what I noticed, like today, putting together our thread on Luke Musgrave, is there's certainly not as much hype about Musgrave. Is that because he missed most of last season? Like, what's the deal with Luke Musgrave? Is he going to be completely landing spot dependent, do you think?
I think really it's a lot of what you were discussing, the fact that there's a lot of question marks about him because he has missed a lot of time just from injury. I think too, there's some questions about the transition that he is going to have into the NFL as a tight end. Like, we know that the tight end spot is a hard one for the transition from college to the NFL, and he probably is going to need some of that time. So I do feel like he's more of a late round dart throw. And I would have taken him probably if he had fallen to me in the 4th round, because I love this tight end class, and I think this is a great place to try and load up on dart throws at tight end for future prospects. But I definitely would not be considering him ahead of Darnell Washington, Dalton Kincaid, and Michael Mayer. And just going back to the Kincaid Michael Mayer discussion, I agree with Joel's comp, and I think Dane Brugler actually also made this comparison of Dalton Kincaid to Mike Gesicki, and I don't love that comp. Like, the thing about Kincaid is he's going to be a pass catcher, and that's it. He's not a blocker. And when I'm looking at some of the elite tight ends, they can block as well.
Josh is saying it's just not going to matter. He just needs to.
Okay, did Travis Kelce block? Because the answer is yes, and that's what makes him such a weapon.
Just don't ask Joe Zolo that question. He is the epitome of a hater. But anyway.
But he blocks, and that's what makes him such a weapon in the red zone, is because they'll be like, oh, he's blocking all of a sudden. And then he cuts out and it's wide open for a touchdown catch. So I want a tight end who at least has the ability to block. That's one of the criticisms frankly you could wield against Kyle Pitts, and why he may not be as much of a threat to opposing defenses, kind of a matchup threat, because people just see him as a receiver.
All right. We're going to keep with the tight end, because I have a question that I like to ask about these tight ends. And then I'm going to throw Michael's question in here. So let's start with Michael's question, because he's the listener and he gets the advantage here. Would we rather have Luke Musgrave or Jelani Woods? I couldn't tell you for the life of me which round Woods went when he went to Indy last year. I think he was a fourth round pick. Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking as well. Still a relatively crowded room in Indianapolis. They don't seem to want to force Jelani Woods on the field. And then, of course, there are quarterback questions. Luke Musgrave or Jelani Woods, Jay?
Neither.
And
that's not a wrong answer. That's something to consider, Michael.
Yeah, I would rather, honestly, I would rather take dart throws at Kraft or Kuntz or something like that later. Mm-hmm. I just, when you're looking at, like you said about Jelani Woods, first of all, we don't know who the quarterback's going to be.
Yeah.
Second thing is there is a crowded receiving core with, again, no offensive line.
Well, and they re-signed Mo Ali Cox to a small deal, if I remember correctly, this offseason. And then they have Kylan Granson. Now, Kylan Granson was more of a favorite of the old coaching staff, so it's going to be interesting to see how he translates to the new staff.
Yeah, so like I said, I would rather take dart throws and then look at possibly even like a Will Mallory, maybe, Peyton Durham, something like that. And again, I'll go right back to the first person I brought up when we were talking about people that we were surprised that weren't gone yet, Sam Laporta.
Yeah. Austin, similar feelings?
Yeah, similar feelings. I'd probably rather take the dart throw on Sam Laporta. But if you were telling me I had to pick between Luke Musgrave and Jelani Woods, I think I would take Luke Musgrave, just because I am not convinced that Jelani Woods is ever going to be more than a volatile tight end, like a typical fantasy tight end that, you're betting on.
He's in the perfect spot to comp him to his own teammates. So.
Exactly. And you know how I feel about fantasy tight ends. I think Luke Musgrave has the potential to be more of a regular top end tight end than Jelani Woods, but I do agree. I think if I am expanding my worldview a little bit, I would probably look at dart throws elsewhere, like Sam Laporta, Tyler Kraft.
Before I turn the floor over to you guys, I do want to throw Josh's comment in here, because it's an interesting situation. He comped Sean Tucker to Justin Ross, where injury concerns kept him out of the NFL draft. And there's still some hype around Justin Ross. Patrick Mahomes literally was just hyping him up again a few weeks ago. And you can say, you're supposed to do that. But Justin Ross is like the 6th wide receiver on that depth chart. And Patrick Mahomes still has positive things to say about him. And if you're a wide receiver, you want Patrick Mahomes to say nice things about you. Jay, anybody we had not had a chance to talk about in this show that you would like to talk about in this show?
Stetson Bennett, because I picked him in the 5th round. Stetson Bennett, all he does is win national championships and then knock on the wrong door. It's okay. Jonathan Mingo, though, he seems to be getting a little hype in the NFL circles, not so much in the fantasy circles. I think that's going to be somebody to watch out for. And then Keyshawn Boutte.
Yes. Talk to me about, okay. Let me just preface this situation for folks before you get into this. So Keyshawn Boutte at one point last season was considered the wide receiver 1 in this draft.
Wait. He was considered the wide receiver 1 by himself.
That's true.
He wasn't by nobody else. He was put that
However, after his freshman and sophomore year, he was on a hell of a track and everything went really, really poorly for him. And then he had the worst pro day ever, the worst job interview you could have possibly had. So please go in. I don't even know if you're going positive or negative about this, but talk about Keyshawn Boutte.
No, I mean, I liked him his freshman year, maybe even his sophomore year, but then the coaching change, and when whatever his name is, I can't remember, but the family comes down there and it starts I don't even know the player's name. Like, how do you not know who is supposed to be your number 1 wide receiver? And then, of course, then it's a whole drama between the two of them, the head coach and Boutte. And then he doesn't want to go. He doesn't want to play for LSU. Then he wants to go to the NFL. Then he doesn't want to go to the NFL. Then he wants to go back to the NFL. It's just there seems to be more problems between the ears than on the field. And I think with a wide receiver, unlike certain things I've said earlier with the quarterbacks, I think the wide receiver does matter. If it's not between the head, if it's not between the ears, I kind of like, okay, stay away.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, especially because there's a lot there. If your quarterback doesn't trust you, it ain't happening either. So
and then you look at landing spots, right? You think about it for a second, and why do these quarterbacks, for instance, like an Aaron Rodgers or a Tom Brady over the years past, we all sit there and go, they don't like rookie wide receivers. They don't like rookie, running backs. Why do they not like them? We've never actually dove into the answer of why.
Yeah.
This could be some of that answer is because they don't have it between the ears.
Really good point.
They wait too long to get into the building and start learning the playbook. They get this loaded contract up front and they got to go spend all the money first before they actually get on the field and earn that paycheck, right? So that could be some of it. But he just I am out on Boutte. As much as I was in on him, I'm out on him now.
It's fair. Austin, how about you? Anybody we didn't get a chance to talk about? You want to throw some names out there?
Yeah. So first, I want to say I'm in on Boutte at this point because everybody's out.
You should be in on Boutte.
Yes. So
I mean, the team names name themselves. So.
Exactly. But the thing for me when I think about this, one of the things I think about is that we forget about this dude's not even 21. Like, if you asked me as a 21-year-old to make a decision about my future, I wouldn't have known what to do. I'm 27 and I'm still questioning my career, let alone trying to make decisions that have millions of dollars of impact on my life. So I look at the situation he was put in of like 3 different offensive coordinators in 3 years. Like, that's a lot to go through. And so I think some of the character concerns can get overblown, and the right landing spot can actually change all of that. Like, we've seen teams like the Patriots, like Seattle, just take a swing on these guys that have quote unquote character concerns. And then in 2 or 3 years, we're like, wow, that was really dumb. That's a really athletic player that's now making us all look silly on defense. So if everybody's out on Boutte, I'm going to be in on him because why not? Like, you swerve when everybody else is going the same direction.
There you go.
But the one player I did want to bring up, and I'm so happy Joel took him, is Trey Palmer from Nebraska. I loved watching this kid play last year. Now, I watched like every Cornhuskers game because my wife is from Nebraska. So I'm a little bit biased in that fact. But to me, if you're in on Jalen Hyatt, you should be on Trey Palmer because they're a very similar style of athlete, similarly sized, and Trey Palmer has that speed that Jalen Hyatt has, except he's a little bit faster. He had a faster 40-yard time during the combine. And the thing that actually makes me like Trey Palmer over Jalen Hyatt is Trey Palmer has the route running skills that I love to see in a receiver, and he spent time both in the slot and out wide. And so he has that ability to shift around the offense, which we've seen take players and move them up to an extra tier once they hit the NFL. So I think Trey Palmer, like if this were a 3-round draft, I would be trying to take him with my last pick to keep him off the waivers. But if he were available in a later round, you take the dart throw.
Perfect. Guys, I'm going to wrap the show up there. So we managed to make an hour show out of a 20-minute draft, which is always my favorite thing about this show. We're going to be back next week. I think we're doing another rookie draft, if I remember correctly. I want to start by thanking you, Jay. Such great information. What a wonderful show. Please remind people where they can find you, what you're working on, any parting words for everybody out there.
Yeah, you can find me over on Twitter at FantasyJ77. You can find me Wednesday nights, Fantasy Intervention on the YouTube. You can find me Thursday, every other Thursday right now, every Thursday during the season, right before the NFL games on Going for Two. DMs are always open. I love chatting it up, especially with the guys in the industry. And if I don't have the answers, I try to go find the guy that has the answer and get them to you as quick as I can. I greatly appreciate
mindset.
I greatly appreciate you guys letting me get on here and chop it up with you. I greatly enjoyed it. Thank you so much.
We love having you. Austin, parting words for the friends.
Yeah, just enjoyed another mock draft. We'll see y'all next Monday. And looking forward to all of our NFL draft content on Wednesday and Thursday and catching me there.
Let's get into it. So this week on Wednesday, we are going to do our new tradition, which is our own first round mock draft. So on Wednesday at 7:00 Eastern live, we are going to have 5 analysts join Josh, Joe, and myself. Austin is one of them. We divvied up every team in the first round of the NFL draft, and we made our picks through, and there were some absolutely insane picks, and I ended up picking like all defensive players for the entire draft, so I'm going to have a ton of great fantasy football info on Wednesday. But
Did Joe jump in? How many punters did Joe take?
No, so we froze Joe out of the draft this year. He is just the host. He is Roger Goodell for the show. So no punters were taken at all this year. No weird linebackers or anything else that Joe typically will throw at us on the show. Then on Thursday, the 6th year of our annual live stream of the first round of the mock draft, we are going to have friends on every single half an hour to hour. Josh has a huge guest list. There's going to be people joining us all the time. I'll be in, I'll be out, but we're going to live stream the first round of the draft to talk about the fantasy implications. Not just football. Every Tuesday, we have our fantasy golf DFS show with Kelly and Adam. Make sure you're tuning into that. I think she may be off this week. I can't say that for 100%, but our best wishes to Kelly in a speedy recovery. And then, of course, speaking of dynasty tight ends, if you're looking for articles, we're going to have an article dropping on the GOAT, Travis Kelce, at 5:00 tonight from Joel Worth on the Club Fantasy website. This show, like I mentioned, is going to be back next week. I don't have a guest yet, but if I don't have a guest, it'll be me and Austin. It is probably going to be a rookie draft because we are going to want to take a look at how things changed after these guys have landed. So Monday is going to be our first opportunity to take a look at that. Always remember that defense wins championships, offense wins fantasy football, and practice makes perfect. We'll see you with the next mock draft. Have a great Monday.